Hey, welcome to the channel, friends. Man, as always, I am stoked to see you. So I want to take, it's been a while since I've really peeled back the onion a little bit and share anything on more of a personal nature. So I wanted to take just a few brief minutes, moments, whatever it turns out to be in, and talk about some little things, because I think as we try to understand some context of where we are, who somebody is, I think it's all the little things. The big things matter, but all of the little things that combine and snowball over the years, if you will, help create and generate some momentum for what we know about ourselves today. So that's what I'm going to do here. As I get going, I do want to encourage you to share maybe a little thing from your life. And if you want to know more, if you're curious, you want to get to know more about who Stoker really is, and not just the guy who's off running around in the woods, go to the Stoker Mania playlist and do that. And drop some comments down below. Man, we keep this conversation rolling. I enjoy learning about some of y'all down in the comment section as well. So I think, I have shared in the past a little bit of some bio, kind of a condensed bio, if you will, and a couple other times. So what I was really thinking, little things of, before, pre-1994, 95. Excuse me. So I'm thinking, as I turn back, I was born in Roswell, New Mexico, back in 1976, and we didn't live there long. My dad worked as a manager in a Tandy leather store. And by this point in time, he was a little bit older. He'd already been married to my mom for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years at that point in time. He'd already had, my brother was 6 years older than I was anyways. And I think the wide space between us is probably due to, him being diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at an early age. And but they decided they're going to try to have another one, so out popped a baby Stoker, the old dude here in the seat, and he had already graduated from college, and like I said, was working in a tanning leather factory. Before that, he was in the Marines, served in Vietnam. It was a cabinet maker running up in Albuquerque with his family. And so, they working there, and he got offered a position to take over the store down in El Paso del Norte. And so we moved down there as a family. Of course, I don't remember this, but we were down in the valley. And it didn't last long. I think only maybe a year, and then we were up on the east side. It was kind of an interesting time, growing up in the desert Southwest. I think, especially back then, because I remember running up into New Mexico on highways, right? Not just on side roads or forest roads, but on highways. And the highways weren't paved yet. Some of the highways were not paved, man. I can remember that. Going over to Alamogordo and TRC and stuff, it's pretty wild. I remember watching the Challenger explosion, like I'm sure a lot of you guys do. That certainly left an imprint. Think about, 80s, me and my wife, we watched the Goldbergs and stuff, so it's funny to see because some of that, it really does hit home from just all the little nuances. Moving forward, got into the scouting program through a friendship, really good friend of mine, Aaron. And I already, at that point, I loved being outdoors. My dad, as part of being a leather salesman, and in the Southwest, in the mountains, we would go to rendezvous reenactments, and he would sell and barter some leather on the side there. It wasn't big business for him. It was just more of an experience. It was something that him and I and Bob shared. But the other thing that it did for my dad, being the wide eye and selling leather and crafting relationships the way that he did, was it opened the door for him and for us to be invited to hang out with some of the mescaleros, a little bit more behind the scene. So we were up on the reservation, and it was some trade show, and we're all duded up in our mountain man apparel, and we got our baker tent, and we're throwing axes and our tomahawks and knives and stuff. And I remember that in the evening, they shut everything down and all the wide eyes had to leave. But my dad had generated such a rapport through some honesty, through some integrity, through some talking some story and some shared experiences, that we were invited to stay overnight. I can't remember how long this event was. I'm going to put it a week in my head. And hear over the loudspeakers, throughout the day and night. Good evening to all of those of you who are now going to bed, and good morning to all those of you who are waking up. And they say the same thing, at sunrise. Place was hopping and popping 24/7. But the experience was really wild because, after all the wide eyes left, all the powwow really began. And for us to be invited to partake in something like that was just, it was a little bit of mesmerizing, And that Shared for the Outdoors, continued on, in the scouting program, and camping and hiking all over New Mexico, up to, went up to Philmont a couple times, worked up there one summer. And I remember riding the train going to Philmont one year from Ruidoso. And that train ride running through the heart of some back country, like country that nobody sees, So you're not around any roads. There was nothing around us, just through the country. And I remember the herds of antelope. Man, that was something. Really felt connected to the country. Of course, I shared this before a little bit, but when I was 13 years old, I found myself in the Gila wilderness working on a ranch. And 13 years old, 8 hours away from home, working on a ranch that we barely knew these people by. It tells you something about culture of the time and the place, For mom and dad to not have any, deep-seated reservations about, sending their kid off to go work for somewhere like that. But man, that work was hard. It was great. It was fantastic. And Campbell Ranch at the time would take, of course we had our local camp operations, so it's a normal, riding fence and digging ditch and fixing well and taking care of the horses and moving them around. But what they were really getting into was taking people out on horseback rides, but expedition hunting. So on horseback, going out overnight somewhere, and sometimes I remember upwards of a couple days overnight, like not a couple days overnight out in the wilderness, but riding through the roughest country and dropping people off and then coming back a week later to pick them up, absolutely phenomenal. But some of the trails we were on, man, it was kind of a, whew, glad this horse is kind of sure-footed. But that experience, I'd really classify that more as a big thing, but it was something else. I think that's really the time, when I can clearly begin to see who I became to be. Clear as a bell. It was from that moment, from that experience. 13 years old. That's something else. Do you have that kind of a moment? When you knew, at least when you look back on, maybe not in the moment. I didn't know in the moment. But certainly I can look back on that moment and say that was it. Pretty crazy, man. At school, I wouldn't really, honor student. I did love history, and I still do, and I love reading about history and getting context to big events or just culture. I certainly was no brainiac. I did a lot of bartering, in school, selling some of my dad's leather products. This one time, sold a pair of leather pants to my 8th grade English teacher. Who do you think the hero of the year was every time she wore those pants to school? Man, she was hot. That was something else. Oh, man. So the year before that, junior high, went to school, and it was closer to the valley. It was a 3-mile bus ride, which really sucked if I missed the bus, which was only right down the street. It was like a 45-minute walk, man. That's crazy. But that school was a little rough. At least rough being the gringo in school. We had a lot of fights. At least in the 7th grade. I don't remember fighting after that. Well, a couple times. And there were certainly a couple big fights in high school, but it would not be uncommon to have or be in a fight every day, in the 7th grade. Quickly became friends with this dude named Isaac, who, whatever reason, we got along, but Isaac was like a huge monster, so that kind of that helped me out a little bit. That was pretty wild, though. Had my first concussion in the 7th grade. Playing Smear the Queer or something, and this dude flipped me over his shoulder, and the head came down on a concrete slab. It was pretty wild. My other concussion I had at an early age, I was in the backyard with Bob, and we had taken a whip and tied it onto the roof, and were swinging over a concrete slab, and of course it fell apart and hit the concrete slab and had another concussion. Speaking of whips, man, we used to play, have whip fights all the time out in the front yard, the backyard. Dumbass things that we did. Smacking around each other with whips. Man, that's no joke. That was no joke. I was a latchkey kid. My parents were divorced at an early age, and my dad had moved into an apartment, and so just but we went, I think, every weekend. I don't remember it being every other weekend. It could have been. I don't recall it being every other weekend. But brother being 6 years older, he's moving out, and coming home and hanging out with neighbors' kids, and just running the street and not doing my homework, and I don't know. I think there is something, with having been a latchkey kid and some of the independence that's just naturally kind of there to get out the door and to make it home and to get inside and take care of the dogs and all the little things. And I don't know. I haven't really thought about what those implications may or may not have been. It was all right. Me and Mom got along all right, and of course I love my dad and look up to him like it's nobody's business. And moving into high school, had a little bit of a shift. Of course, I've done work over the summer, and had started off with a 1968 Dodge pickup truck. It's one of the ugliest trucks you've ever seen in your life. And then graduated to a 1969 Dodge Dart, and then graduated to a 1984 Custom Deluxe Chevy pickup truck. It was root beer brown, white pinstripes, custom headache rack and grill guard, toolbox in the back. Best truck I've ever had. And there's another great story right there. That's a big moment for sure. But in high school, it was a kind of a big high school in town. And I wasn't really in any clique. Just me and a few buds hanging out. I was in vocational, building homes the last couple of years. Enjoyed that. That was a good experience. I actually only did that for a year. I was in vocational for both years, but my senior year, my instructor had nominated me to go out in town and work, so I worked at a lumber yard during my senior year in the morning. So that was pretty cool. But swinging hammers and working with a crew, building those homes, that was something else as well. Mr. Huff was our teacher, and I remember him rather well. He was a really good man. And I can't remember the name, but I do remember my senior English teacher. He was really good. A couple of big fights, like I was saying earlier, man. Dudes getting stabbed. That was something else. Mob fights too, man. That was pretty wild. It wasn't uncommon going to school with having a rifle in the car or the truck. Always had a knife on me. It's pretty crazy. Didn't have a whole lot of girlfriends growing up. Had some on and off again, but I didn't feel the luckiest around the girls. But I enjoyed them just like anybody else, I guess. About this time I'm graduating, and at high school graduation, I walked and received my diploma with my black cowboy hat on. It kind of turned some heads. Or did I have my white one? Yeah, I had my white hat. Graduated and went to work at a El Paso saddlery for a while. And of course, on and off, I was working for my dad every summer. Working for my dad, whether we were in Tandy Leather or when he went off to work for another leather company. And that was something else too, just growing up and doing leather crafting, as a kid and hanging out and playing in the boxes and in the warehouse playing on the boxes, man. That was crazy. Big old warehouse, 10,000 plus square foot, I guess, and was buying and selling scrap leather, and so it was all in boxes, maybe 80, 90 pound boxes of leather, and stacked, going up, probably 8, 10 high, it seemed, and as much as you can imagine, and buying from selling hides to like furniture manufacturers or auto manufacturers for making seats, and then buying the scrap back and then selling the scrap overseas for them to make purses and shoes and wallets and whatnot. And me and Bob, man, we'd run from box to box up on top and see how big, if there was a chasm in between, can we jump across? And it's no big deal if you fall, because you're falling on leather and it's kind of a softish fall. Yeah, that was great. That was good times. Had a good friend I knew growing up, knew him from elementary school all the way through graduation, Randall Tarkowski. He was a tall, lanky kid, man. Bit my finger back in kindergarten. Dumb things we did. Kicking each other off of monkey bars and sliding down the metal slides and getting burned. I love them old jungle gyms. But he swallowed a shotgun one day after high school. None of us knew why. Had another good friend just being on the wrong side of the highway, being down in the valley, and gotten shanked and had a crowbar pierce and come in here and came out here and totally ripped his jaw out. His jaw was wired shut for years, drinking out of a damn straw. It's crazy. Remember the news and having a serial killer running through the area. Everybody's scared to go out in the desert. Man, me and my friends, we loved going out in the desert. Wrap my Dodge Dart around some barbed wire fence. That was something else. Somehow I get myself unstuck and get back up, and of course I run out of gas getting home, and my dad meets me at the gas station, and I got my Carhartt laid over the fender so he can't see what this barbed wire fence did to the fender. It falls off and looks at me and says, "Well, it's your car, son." I bought my first truck, like I said, and that was cash out of my pocket, $300. I didn't buy the car. That was more of a hand-me-down from my brother. And the truck I bought with my own cash. Growing up, my dad would meet me kind of halfway on some bigger purchases. Of course, we were all into BMX and stuff, doing crazy-ass tricks and whatnot. And I bought this mongoose that I was super proud of, man. I want to say we spent about $300 on this bike, is what it feels like. I don't know if it can't be how much we spent on the bike. But me and my buds, man, my dad's, I wanted that bike really bad. My dad bought half of it, and I bought the other half. And it was a lesson learned of saving money and stuff, So we go up to the Circle K. Man, we rode all over town, all over town. And miles we would ride, man. Crazy. We'd ride all the way to the Cielo Vista Mall, and that was miles and miles away. But it wouldn't be anything to be, out and away from the house, running around all stinking day. Absolutely crazy. We go up to Circle K or 7-Eleven, I can't remember which one it was, and run inside and grab a big gulp. That must have been 7-Eleven. Right? Big gulp 7-Eleven, I think. I can't remember. Come outside and somebody stole my bike. That was one of the worst days of my life. Broke my best friend's finger for touching my hat. It's like a Chris Ledoux song brought to life. Don't touch my hat, Matt. Don't touch my hat, Matt. I told you not to touch my hat, Matt. And that's about how it went down. The summer after I graduated, like I said, I went to work for El Paso Saddlery. That was a crazy business. You know, they originally established back in the 1800s, and they'd built a rig for John Wesley Hardin, and then over the years, they built rigs for Hollywood and John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, and almost every Western movie from the 70s moving forward. You know, I think they had their hands in making products for them. So it was great. I loved it. It's just a small shop, and Bobby McNell is running the show, man. He was a fantastic dude, and had lots of good gatherings of like-minded people. Of course, back in this time, you know, if you go to El Paso now, of course El Paso is completely shut down right now because of pandemic stuff. But it would be nothing to go over into Juarez and just walk around the courtyard, walk around the shops, you know, doing all kinds of stuff, and I loved it, man. Loved it. I think, and to this day, I think some of my favorite towns I've been in around the world, places like Naples, Italy, Calcutta, India, Lima, Peru, and Cusco. These are all like really dirty towns, man. Like not clean, gritty, but there's something really authentic about them. And I don't know. It all kind of ties back into enjoying walking around Juarez and feeling the sun baking down on you. I don't like the heat much anymore, but I didn't mind it so much as a kid. Working in the saddlery, as kind of a salesman and doing a little bit of odds and ends work in the shop, watching these artisans, watching these craftsmen do some things that I was blown away by it, man. These guys were artists. And so I was working for him, and then I was going to school up in Las Cruces, taking some agricultural classes, and one of them was we were bringing in horses, and the whole time I'd been in the horse business for a while, training horses and showing them as well, quarter horses. But I was really super proud of this moment because we went up into the mountains. Armstrong was the last name. I can't remember what his first name was, but he was my instructor. In our class, we went up into the mountains and gathered up some wild mustangs. Horses that nobody had ever been on before. They've been wild their entire life since they were born. But they were going to die because of lack of rain, and it was destroying their feed. So we brought them in, and we trained them. And that was a really interesting experience. Take a Mustang and not just a foal, like that's easy to fingerprint and to get accustomed to people, but earning the trust of a wild Mustang, that was pretty crazy. I enjoyed that so much. Horseman I was working on, he was ugly as sin. But he turned out all right. The area that we pulled the horses from, it's kind of a desert area. And I tell you, the desert Southwest really, I think, I can't imagine that it's changed all that much as far as the culture and the type of people that it grows and generates. Because it's not the same as what you get in the city. You get out into the desert, man, it could be 110 degrees outside at night. And without having the concrete to keep any of that warmth, man, you could have a 40-degree temperature drop at night. If you're driving through the country, you don't ever pass a gas station at night because the odds of one being open is slim to nil. And you could drive 4, 5, 6 hours in between cities